Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you. I was just about to have a drink and do a little reading, and well, it'd be nice to have a little company. So, yeah, kick back, relax, and let's do this. Cheers to you, and Jesus too. Doing the chamomile tonight. It's pretty late, so a little too late for drinking anyway, at least for me. But bring what you got, and don't feel obligated to drink anything you don't want to. The important thing is that we have a good time, right? So, anyway, we'll get right to the reading, I suppose. Going to continue the Bill of Rights series that I've been doing, and tonight we're going to do the Second Amendment, which is personally my favorite amendment. A lot of controversy, a lot of anger, a lot of love. This one evokes a lot of emotions, and well, tonight's going to be fun. Let's just say that. I'm looking forward to a lively debate in the comments section, and yeah, this is going to be good. You're going to like it. I'm going to like it. But I hope you like it. Anyway, let's see. So just to recap, they had the Revolutionary War, overthrew the British. Then they had the Articles of Confederation. That was kind of the original American government. Then they did the Constitution because they felt that the Articles of Confederation weren't quite cutting it, and came up with a Constitution. And in the Constitution, the first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights, and I think those are the most important ones. Just my opinion, but they're my favorite because I feel they're the most important. So anyway, yeah, brief little recap. Without further ado, the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, which reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Short, simple, but a lot of controversy. I'll break it down. We're going to break it down tonight. So, first off, before we get into all the other things, we'll start with the beginning. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. So, what is a militia? Let's start with that. What is a militia? And I will grab my handy-dandy papers because I'm old school like that. Yeah. Let's see. This one comes from Britannica. I think that's how you spell it or say it. I just pulled this. I mean, you can pull up any definition you want. You can go. There's dozens of sites out there. I just pulled this one up because I found it the most useful. This one defines militia. Let's see. Military organization of citizens with limited military training, which is available for emergency service, usually for local defense. Skipping ahead. In colonial America, the militia, based on the tradition of the feud, which is some kind of old school Middle Ages thing. Anyway, feud. It was the only defense against hostile Indians during the long periods when regular British forces were not available. During the American Revolution, the militia provided the bulk of the American forces, as well as a pool for recruiting or drafting of regulars. The militia played a similar role in the War of 1812 and the American Civil War. So, put that over there. Militia, military unit. I would define the militia as a group of citizens, private citizens, coming together for the common defense. That's just my own personal definition. Take that as you will. But I find it to be pretty accurate. It's people coming together to defend themselves, their property, their neighbors. It's really the epitome of self-defense, which I'll get into later. But anyway, all we need to know for now is that the militia is a military unit made up of individual citizens, and they have a pretty good history going back. So obviously, the militia has been with America since before its founding. Very rich history, a lot of stuff there, and I can't cover it all in this video, but I just wanted to kind of share some things with you. The first being I'm sure you're all familiar with the Minutemen. They fought in the Revolutionary War, and they were kind of more than your average militia. They were more well trained, be ready in a minute, that kind of thing. I guess you could call them the elite of the militia. But anyway, it was the Minutemen that fired the first shots at Lexington, and the first shot heard around the world, and it started the Revolutionary War, which is, the war that we won independence with, and it wouldn't have been won without the militia. A lot of debate around that, but I don't think you can debate that it would have been won entirely by the regular army. The militia helped a lot, right? Volunteers. And we can certainly debate that, but I think we all know the militia contributed a lot to that war. However, the militia, as it's stated in there, they were part of the Civil War, War of 1812. Let's see, the 1st South Carolina Artillery Battalion, they bombed Fort Sumter, which started the Civil War. And both North and South at the time really didn't have much in the way of standing army. It was all just militias. So that's interesting tidbit. And one other one I wanted to bring up. The Battle of Gettysburg, considered to be the turning point of the Civil War. One episode which helped turn the tide involved the militia from Maine. Joshua L. Chamberlain, a former professor at Maine's Bowdoin College, commanded the 20th Maine Volunteer Militia, organized in the Maine Volunteer Militia. In August 1862, the 20th Maine mustered into federal service several weeks later. The 20th was ordered to hold critical terrain between Big and Little Round Top at all costs. They held off 6 attacks by determined Alabama regiments. Chamberlain knew his men didn't have the ammunition to fight off a 7th attack, so he ordered his men to fix bayonets and charge downhill. The assault stopped the Confederate threat to the Union flank and contributed mightily to an important Union victory. Joshua Chamberlain was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1893 for his action. Almost 2 years later, Brevet, I'm sorry, I know I'm probably screwing that up. I was in the Air Force too, and I don't know this one. I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry. Brevet Major General Chamberlain, chosen to accept the Confederate surrender at Appomattox Courthouse, ordered Union troops to present arms for their former enemy as a mark of respect. The heritage of the 20th Maine is carried on today by the 133rd Engineer Battalion, Maine Army National Guard. So, there you go. The militia, once again, played kind of a key role in a major war, the Civil War. So, yeah, big history, big heritage. Like I said, I could go on for days, but I won't. But I just want to kind of show you that the militia has a history, it has a heritage, it has a part of America. So a lot of people seem to think that the militia is a bunch of mountain people hanging out in the Appalachians, you know what I mean? They're a bunch of weirdos. And that's not the case, right? It was regular, average Joes defending their home and fighting when their country called them. Honorable stuff, really. So, anyway, Another point I wanted to bring up. Let's see. Back to the Second Amendment, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Interesting choice of words there, and kind of wanted to break that down a little too tonight. So, being necessary to a free state. It doesn't say it's optional. It doesn't say it's important. It says it's necessary. Which I guess important was a poor choice of words. Optional, right? I'll stick with that. They didn't say it's optional, right? It said it's necessary. A well-regulated militia. And as you can see, they fought in quite a lot of wars, and nobody had a problem with it back then. So my question to you, why do you think the Founding Fathers set it up that way? Why do they say the militia is necessary to a free state? I have the answer right here. I'm going to quote Thomas Jefferson, who says, "There are instruments so dangerous to the rights of the nation, and which place them so totally at the mercy of their governors, that those governors, whether legislative or executive, should be restrained from keeping such instruments on foot, but in well-defined cases. Such an instrument is a standing army." Interesting. Next one, also Thomas Jefferson. "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies." And yet somehow today we have both. But we'll get on banks later. Right now we're focusing on standing armies. Once again, Mr. Jefferson taking on standing armies. Interesting. The next one, James Madison. Here we go. "In time of actual war, great discretionary powers are constantly given to the executive magistrate. Constant apprehension of war has the same tendency to render the head too large for the body. A standing military force with an overgrown executive will not long be safe companions to liberty. The means of defense against foreign danger have always been the instruments of tyranny at home. Among the Romans, it was a standing maxim to excite a war whenever a revolt was apprehended. Throughout all Europe, the armies kept under the pretext of defending have enslaved the people." A standing military force with an overgrown executive will not long be safe companions to liberty. James Madison. Interesting, yet again. Last one. This guy was not a founding father. This guy is Elbridge Gerry, or Gary. Once again, I'm sorry. 5th Vice President of the United States. 5th Vice President, so he's going back quite a ways, so kind of still near that founding father era when, the original intentions were still relatively intact. And he states, "What, sir, is the use of a militia? It is to prevent the establishment of a standing army, the bane of liberty. Now it must be evident that, under this provision, together with their other powers, Congress could take such measures, with respect to a militia, as to make a standing army necessary. Whenever governments mean to invade the rights and liberties of the people, they always attempt to destroy the militia, in order to raise an army upon their ruins." So there you have it. The United States was not meant to have a full-time standing army. And let me turn back to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8. Taxes, punishment of counterfeiting, post office. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. Right? Every 2 years, you gotta evaluate whether or not you want to have a standing army. To provide forth for calling the militia. Hang on. Take 2. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Interesting. Calling forth the militia to suppress insurrections and repel invasions. Not the army, the militia. Once again, interesting. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. Once again, militia, not standing army. And for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia, according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. So Congress is to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, providing such part of them, yeah. And then the states get to take the officers, pick the officers, and authority of training according to the discipline, yeah. So they get to, Congress says we need troops that are trained, and the states are supposed to train them. Right? Right there. Somebody forgot to tell the Pentagon that, though, right? Whoopsies. Big mistake right there. You see, it was never the intention of the Founding Fathers to have a standing army. I know I've said that many times, but I'm going to repeat it. Because I'm just astounded. I don't know why we have a standing army, let alone the biggest one on planet Earth. It's shocking. I mean, everything in the Constitution states the Founding Fathers, right? Armies are dangerous to liberty. Not only that, they're terribly expensive. Talking about the DoD and the Pentagon, you know how much money they eat every year? It's astounding, right? That money would better be put to use by giving that back to the taxpayers, us, right? We could use that money instead of gallivanting off in the Middle East and bombing tons of sand and doing who knows what. We could use that money, right? Billions of dollars, contractors enriched, all sorts of graft theft. And then on top of that, you know, we paid for rebuilding a lot of these nations, which costs money. So, and whether or not you think we should or not, the point is it costs money, a lot of money. And the Founding Fathers, in all their wisdom, saw that it was dangerous. And George Washington himself warned us about foreign entanglements. This exact scenario that we're having right now. We're all over the planet. We're in Africa. We're in the Middle East. We've got bases all over the planet. That costs money. And it costs prestige, right? People don't like that, especially in the Middle East. Now, granted, I know a lot of you have low opinions of people in the Middle East, but I think we all can agree that we have no business there, especially after, what, 20 years now? What do we have to show for it? Nothing. Dead bodies. Wasted money. Come on. They warned us. They set up a system so that that wouldn't happen, and we ignore it, right? Anyway. On to my next point. Yes, I have it. There's more, but wait. Should have brought a binder. Okay. Actually, my next point. The militia obviously is a military unit, right? Turning back to the Second Amendment. Well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So a militia is made up of individual citizens, private citizens coming together for the common defense. People like me, people like you. And as such, we have a right to bear arms. You have a right to self-defense, right? I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Any reasonable person, anyway. You have a right to defend yourself. And thus, ergo, you have a right to team up with individuals for your defense, right? It's basically a militia. So, because we have this right to defend ourselves, we have the right to keep and bear arms. And Like I said, the militia is a military unit. Therefore, if the people can keep their arms and form a militia, that's our right. We have the right to military weapons. And I know that's controversial. I know. But bear with me. Hang on. The men at Lexington that fired the shot, right, that started the Revolutionary War. That was some pretty sophisticated hardware for its time, right? And, right, military hardware, taking on the regular British Army, doing a military action. Nobody complained. Nobody said you need to put that military hardware down, right? No. They needed that to fight the war. In the Civil War, right? The Fort Sumter, the guys that bombed Fort Sumter, you think they did that with muskets? No. They did that with artillery and cannons that they had. Most firearms were, and weapons of war were privately owned. So, and the War of 1812, same thing, right? Militias, yeah, it's a thing. Military hardware, we have a right to own that, which I know is shocking to modern sensibilities, but it's true. And I know what you're thinking. You're going to say, but Dave, that's ridiculous. Like, you're saying you can own tanks and battleships and all sorts of these destructive weapons? And to which I would reply, yes, and there's a precedent for that, actually. So, actually, let me start here. We'll go back to Article 1, Section 8. Okay. Which states Congress has the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. So, grant letters of marque and reprisal. The reason I bring that up is because normally those were used by navies, right? Privateering. Back in the day, people had private battleships, which were pretty much the most sophisticated, certainly the largest and most sophisticated military equipment, pieces of equipment, weapons of the time, right? It really didn't get more deadly than a battleship. And I mean, even today, if you had one of those battleships and you broadsided a port city, that would do a lot of damage, even today. And I do have, let's see. It's a nifty little article, which it's called "Yes, Privateers Mattered" by Frederick Liner. Just a quick excerpt. When the United States went to war against Britain in June 1812, the U.S. Navy had about 15 warships in commission, including a squadron of 3 frigates and 2 sloops of war that sailed from New York within an hour of receiving word of the declaration of war. America began the War of 1812 with no privateers ready to sail. Privately owned merchant ships that, in wartime, were armed by their owners and licensed by the government to attack the maritime trade of the enemy. Privateers profited by the sale of ships and cargoes they captured. As soon as word of the war arrived, ship owners in the port cities up and down the Atlantic coast raced to get their sleek sloops and schooners to sea in their new predatory role. They found cannon where they could, signed up oversized civilian crews, and sent messengers to Washington to get licenses called letters of marque from the federal government. On 26 June 1812, a week after Congress voted for war, it passed a bill allowing privateers, which President James Madison signed the next day. With their licenses, which would make their captures lawful, not active piracy. It's late in the day. Oh my god, late in the night, I should say. Oh my goodness. Their ships manned, outfitted for war. Privateers began to stream out of American ports in July 1812. I could go on. I think I'll stop it there. Oh, wait. Privateering was critical for the American war effort. In the 3 years of the War of 1812, U.S. Navy warships captured about 250 vessels. Okay, not bad, right? But American privateers took at least 5 times that number of British merchant vessels, at least 1,200, but probably as many as 2,000, although no one knows for sure. The privateers burned some of the British merchant ships they captured, ransomed others back to their owners, lost many to recapture by the British Navy, and brought home prize ships and goods that sold for millions of dollars. Making your enemy pay for your war effort. Genius, instead of bilking the taxpayers. What an astounding idea. Anyway, let's see. And I wanted to read this one too. Letters of Marque and Reprisal, an introduction by Dave Benner. The founders had the prophetic foresight to conclude that there may be times in which the United States wished to enact retribution against enemies without the necessity of waging a costly, expensive war. As many realized, war is a menace to individual liberty and a friend to an overreaching government. During the Philadelphia summer of 1787, James Madison... Yeah, okay, I already read that thing. Head too large for the body, standing military force, yeah. Throughout the War of Independence, privateering created a major source of commerce and employment for many states. The practice proved significant, leading to the seizure of about 300 British ships during the war. During the War of 1812, Madison used such letters to oppose the British, realizing that the United States lacked a sophisticated navy to oppose a world power. Yeah, okay. So, private warships that were not only allowed, they were quite effective. There's almost 5 times as many warships in the War of 1812. And they captured enemy goods, enemy stuff, raiding the enemy, making them pay for our war effort, you know. How far we've fallen, making us pay for things, right? Anyway, like I said, my point is, it's not unprecedented that civilians would own military hardware, and in fact, up until the 1980s, we were allowed to own fully automatic rifles, machine guns, stuff like that, and it was fine. Nobody batted an eye. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say other than it is what it is, you know. So what happened basically? Let's see. Why are our modern sensibilities so different now? Why are people so hostile to the idea of owning? I mean, forget military hardware, right? People are so hostile to the ownership of firearms completely. So what happened? You know. Well, personally, I blame a court case. It's United States versus Miller, right? I'm not going to get into too much of it. I'll give you the gist of it, but let's see. In 1935, Jack Miller, along with co-plaintiff Frank Layton, were arrested in Arkansas and charged with, among other things, transportation of a sawed-off shotgun across state lines without having the proper tax stamp. The case was initially dismissed on the grounds that the NFA, National Firearms Act, provisions violated the defendant's Second Amendment right to bear arms, which is correct. The lower court was correct. Shall not be infringed, right? However, the case was appealed by the government, of course, and went up the judicial ladder until granted a writ of, I can't even say that, yeah, I'm not going to try, and heard by the Supreme Court of the United States in May 1929. The government contended that the purpose of the Second Amendment was to maintain the ability of the people to be armed for duty in the militia and thus for military purposes. Interesting. The government arguing that the ability of the people to be armed for duty in the militia needed to be for military purposes. Weird. Since a sawed-off shotgun has little to no military application, supposedly, as opposed to a combat shotgun, it doesn't apply. And the court rendered an 8-0-1 decision that it did not, with Justice James McReynolds writing the opinion and Justice William Douglas abstaining. Justice Reynolds, writing for the court, held, in the absence of any evidence tending to show that possession or use of a shotgun having a barrel of less than 18 inches in length at this time has some reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia, we cannot say that the Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear such an instrument. Certainly it is not within judicial notice that this weapon is any part of the ordinary military equipment or that its use could contribute to the common defense. What this means is that firearms considered outside ordinary military equipment are, according to the Supreme Court, and therefore, unless changed by an act of Congress or constitutional amendment, the law of the United States, not necessary for a person to be able to carry and bear arms. Let me break that down. There's a lot there. So basically, the Supreme Court ruled that, indeed, we do have a right to military hardware. However, they can define what military hardware is, basically, which is totally wrong. It's absurd. It's outrageous, you know. The idea that a shotgun having a barrel of less than 18 inches in length at this time has some reasonable... You're telling me that you're defining a military hardware by how long the barrel is? So then why are pistols legal? Why aren't you going after pistols, right? Pistols have short barrels. You didn't ban those. What if the shotgun less than 18? What if it's 19? What if it's 18 and a half? What if it's 17? What if it's 30 inches? What does it matter? It's a shotgun. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And I like the little newspeak word salad that they use. In the absence of any evidence tending to show that the possession or use of shotgun, blah, blah, blah. So he's basically saying the burden of proof is on us, or the defendant, right? Evidence tending to show. Why do I need to prove to you that a gun is for military use? It's a gun. It shoots things. It's not my job to prove to you whether it has a military use or not. I mean, for example, if the military decided to, the United States Army decided that they were going to use shotguns with 18 inches, does that ruling stand? Or better yet, let's say the Navy decided to use 10-inch guns on their ships. Are you going to rule that the 10-inch guns aren't suitable and that they need to use 12-inch guns or bigger guns because they're not suitable for naval or military use? I mean, are you for real? And this is why I'm not a fan of the Supreme Court, because for almost its entire existence, it's gotten almost every ruling completely wrong. Just outrageous. They're just absolutely outrageous. I mean, they pull these rulings out of their rear end. You know, it doesn't have a military use. It shoots people. It's a gun. I need to have some tea. Like I said, you're defining military use by barrel length. That is the silliest thing I've ever heard. Like I said, a pistol. Why aren't you going after pistols? But I do want to stress the argument that the government made. The government didn't say that we couldn't own military hardware, right? That wasn't even their argument. They didn't argue that we don't have a right to firearms. Their argument was that the sawed-off shotgun didn't have a military use. That was it. And that's how we ended up with one of the first firearms bans, I guess you could say. And then in 1986, they did away with automatic firearms. So, anyway, interesting stuff, isn't it? That kind of started the chain, and to where we are now. I mean, you can't even have a bump stock anymore. you know. How the times they change, you know. But one day, when I get into power, I'm looking to change these things, go back to the way that they were intended to be. Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here for the most part. Second Amendment, right? The militia, well regulated. It was part of our history. It's part of our heritage. The militia is enshrined in the Constitution. The militia is made up of private citizens, and therefore, right, we can own military firearms, weapons, equipment, stuff like that. Nobody had an eye before. It wasn't a problem. Now you've got people freaking out for some odd reason. I don't know. But just in closing, I want to just say something. The Second Amendment enshrines the right to keep and bear arms. It shall not be infringed, which means any regulation, any law, any tax, any fee is unconstitutional, and in my opinion is against our rights, our divine rights. I believe that these rights were given to us divinely. The Declaration of Independence states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. So, our rights exist. Right? Our rights aren't words on paper, and I want, especially conservatives, I want you to be careful with that. You say, I have a constitutional right. Yeah, but here's the thing, the Constitution can change. You know what I mean? So you want to say you have a God-given right, right? You have a God-given right to defend yourself. You have a God-given right to defend your family and your home. You have a God-given right to band together with your community, with your families, your friends, and defend yourselves. I know a lot of people think that the National Guard has replaced the militia, but it hasn't. I mean, it certainly fills that role, it does, but nowhere in the Constitution does it say that. It says it's necessary. The militia is necessary. So, okay, we have a National Guard, but that doesn't do away with the militia. You know, just because you have something, right, the National Guard doing a job, doesn't mean you can't have the militia doing the job. In fact, in my opinion, the National Guard is under the militia. The militia has a higher priority because it's in the Constitution. And we have a God-given right to defend ourselves. It's a human right. You have a right to defend your property. And you have a right to get together with people to do the same and to defend your homes, your cities. I mean, talk about the National Guard. Look at what happened. You know, the anarchists and wicked people burned down our cities, and the National Guard became kind of a political tool, right? Our governors stood by and did nothing and let our cities burn, which is wrong. And honestly, I'm just going to say it. It was quite evil. It was a nasty, wicked thing to do. Now, if you had a militia, which is enshrined in the Constitution and is our natural right, that wouldn't have happened, right? If you had a proper militia. And I look forward to the day when the militias start making a comeback. I mean, a big comeback. Another thing I wanted to bring up. Because we have a divine right of self-defense, it can't be taken away. It cannot be taken away, ever. So I just want you to know that even if the leftists get what they want and they take away the Second Amendment, if they get together somehow and they strike the Second Amendment the way they did Prohibition, I think that's the 19th. Don't quote me on that. Let's say they do away with the Second Amendment. Doesn't matter. We still have the right to bear arms. We still have the right to form militias for our common defense. We have the right to do so. And It doesn't go away just because 535 idiots in Congress struck words from paper. It doesn't. I don't care. They exist. We have a life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We have a right to these things. And no one can take that away, right? And if they try to, well, we're supposed to give them what for, you know? We will hold our heads high and tell them to come and take it. That's what we'll do. Anyway, I think that about covers it. Yeah. Certainly a long one, but I think you got the point. Yeah, all right. I hope you have a good night. I hope you have a good weekend. I hope you had a good holiday. Thanksgiving was not that long ago. We have Christmas coming up, so I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. I hope you and your family stay healthy, and I hope things go well for you. I hope, I wish the best for you. And if you're struggling, you need help, you feel like things are just too much for you, let me know. And I mean, even if you don't want to reach out, I'll keep you in my thoughts and my prayers. I really will. You know, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed to be a Christian. I'm not ashamed to pray. Ashamed to pray for people. You know. We gotta stick together. You know, and regardless of religion or belief or anything, you know, I'll still pray for you. And even if you don't believe in the whole prayer thing, just know that I wish the best for you. You know. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.